Hey guys, hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. And another heavyweight news mashup video today, starting with the rising Croatian prospect Filip HRGOVIC, who's been riding out the pandemic in his native homeland. But he expects to be back in the ring, potentially in the United States, in the coming months. Looking at September, and he's got a number of names that he is targeting. And thank you to LDog for sharing the link to this article, which is from fightsite.hr. So he's done an interview with them, and the transcript is on their website. I'll leave a link to it if you want to go to it. You have to translate it if you don't speak Croatian. But in terms of his next steps, and it's quite interesting because for me it raises a question. Is he still being co-promoted by Matchroom and fighting on DAZN? Because some of what he's saying, the names that he's talking about, it would indicate to me maybe not, but we don't have enough information to really sort of verify that. Or perhaps he's throwing out names that are unrealistic, I don't know. But he said that there's a lot of names that he wants to face, but the ones that he does want, he's probably too high risk for them now. And he says it's going to take some matches to get to those names. But the list that he's seen, he likes very much. He said they're all high-ranking, good names. They may not be top heavyweights, but they're very close. And when he was asked of specific names, he said one of them is the man who fought for the World Championship, Gerald Washington, then Jermaine Franklin, and also Chris Arreola, who has fought for the championship several times. And HRGOVIC goes on to say, I'm saying they may not be canon, but they're dangerous fighters, and for me, a new step. Preparing for such a match would motivate me very much. And there is more, but that's sort of the crux of the article about the names that he believes he can be in against next. And of Gerald Washington and Chris Arreola, they're PBC fighters as far as we know, and Arreola seemingly is going to be facing Andy Ruiz Jr. on a date still to be announced, but that's not quite official yet. But Arreola and Washington, because they are PBC fighters and because HRGOVIC has named them, it does make me wonder, sort of like Michael Hunter, has DAZN sort of scrapped whatever was left on HRGOVIC's co-promotional deal and sort of said, thanks, but, you know, services no longer required. It's a question because Hunter believed he had more fights and time left on his contract, but he was cut adrift. And HRGOVIC has had 3 fights already with Matchroom. Gregory Corbin, Mario Heredia, and also Eric Molina, which was at the end of 2019. So maybe like Hunter, you know, we'll have to see what happens next and if actually anything is announced about this, because if he ends up turning up on a PBC card either on Fox or Showtime, that'll tell us all we need to know. And in respect of those names, Washington, Arreola in particular, he is right, it is a step. I think Arreola has more left in the tank than Eric Molina at this point, not much more. So Arreola is sort of a minor step up. Washington is more the guy I think he should be facing. He's that, 6'6", decent puncher. That would be the best name on his record. And Washington at this point, he might just, that might be one of the better options out there for him in respect of money. Washington, his title days are over. But he is dangerous, as we saw against Robert Helenius a year or so ago, starching him in their fight. So, it's not a fight that you can go into and think that it's just an easy beat. He'll give it a go, but obviously HRGOVIC, with his skills and talent, I'd be picking him to beat Gerald Washington at this point. And the other name there that was mentioned, Jermaine Franklin, who is a Dmitry Salita promoted fighter. I think that he would actually, HRGOVIC would stop Jermaine Franklin in that fight. Out of all those fights, I think that might be the most makeable because Jermaine Franklin is not necessarily tied to a network like some other fighters are. But then again, he is unbeaten at this point. Is Dmitry Salita going to want to pitch Franklin in against a dangerous guy like HRGOVIC for what could, relatively speaking, be short money? Probably not. I think Gerald Washington and Chris Arreola, those are more of the caliber of names, the former title challengers, much like a Johan Dorper, Marius Fuck, that sort of level. And it is another sort of step towards the guys that he wants to be facing. Queensberry promoter Frank Warren is warning fans that Daniel Dubois vs Joe Joyce could be postponed again. It already has been postponed a couple of times, is currently set for October the 24th. Joe Joyce has just beaten Mikhail Wallisch in his fight on July the 25th. Daniel Dubois will be facing Eric Pfeiffer in the BT studio, no fans, on August the 29th. But the fan situation, Warren's made it clear he wants to have a crowd to maximise revenue, and he's told TalkSport, you may get 3,000 people in the 20,000 seat arena, but that's going to look awful. You're not going to be allowed to sit next to each other. You've got to spread them all around the arena. If you've got a 1 meter distance around you and you're sitting in a seat, then it's not just either side of you, it's in front and behind. So that means only 20% of the seats can be sold. So he's talking about the O2 where the fight is currently scheduled for, and he continues, I'd want it full. I've got no idea how many would be allowed in, but I've got to be honest with you, if it's something like 20%, then we'll postpone it again. We've got to have a live audience. That gets a bit more out of the guys. If you've got a competitive fight like Daniel and Joe, you want the crowd cheering their man on. And the thing that was unsaid there is he wants the revenue too, but he's sort of spoken about that before, remembering this was on pay-per-view, but these guys not necessarily, at this stage, proven box office draws, so the live gate could be very important to the event. And this warning from Frank Warren will certainly add some weight to speculation that Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce will have further interim opponents should their fight be postponed. And you may recall from a recent video where I had a piece where Francis Warren was meeting with Lukas Rozansky and Mariusz Wach in Poland. And I would speculate that those two guys are being lined up just in case October doesn't happen, which at this point it's hard to say. Maybe it won't go ahead. I know some people won't like it if their fight is pushed out again, but Wach and Rozansky, not bad opponents for this stage of both of their respective careers, but not the fight between the two that we would like to see happen. And I know some will be exasperated that, look, just make the fight happen without fans. But boxing, it's a business after all, and that will factor into the decision whether to push that fight out again. Meanwhile, just speaking of Joe Joyce, Zhang, and this is something he posted to a social media, not impressed with the performance by Joyce against Daniel Dubois. And just note, I have had to crop this a bit because he had the fight in the corner, so I've zoomed in more on him in his reaction so I can avoid copyright issues. But here it is.
Look a lot on it, but there is a big man.
What's his?
And he just comes forward again. There's the switch of attack again. Tries to get the shot underneath the elbow of Wallisch.
What's his?
Remember now he's getting into his groove, Joe Joyce.
Oh my God.
Fasten.
Really? Joe Joyce.
So clearly Zhang, a silver medalist at the Olympics, wasn't impressed with Joe Joyce and his performance. But if I was to pick those two to have a fight at this point, bearing in mind that Zhang's record is extremely padded, I think I would pick the slightly younger man who has a very good engine and would probably, I think, outwork Zhang, who is a decent fighter, but I'm not sure he could cope with the pressure. It'd be an interesting fight, and I think at this point, with their resumes, they're on a relatively similar level in terms of they need that next step, and they would represent that next step for each other. The Oleksandr Usyk promoted card in Ukraine this weekend will be broadcast on YouTube, and it features 4 heavyweight fights. You have Vladislav Sirenko, he is on the card, Oleksandr Zakozi, also Viktor Vykhryst and Igor Shevazdutskiy. So their opponents, it's not the best matchmaking, but those guys are rising prospects, especially the first 3 that I named. And it will be good to see them back in the ring after some inactivity, mostly brought about by the pandemic. But this is going to be on Usyk 17, the YouTube channel, which you can find. It's easy to find. There's about 70,000 subscribers, so you know the one when you hit it. So this is good for the card because I think a lot of people would have been wondering, where can I find this thing? Am I going to have to look for some sort of dodgy stream that, will be grainy and that sort of thing? But this should be a good card with these rising prospects. I'm looking forward to it. I'll have some more coverage on the channel, a bit of a preview later this week. And moving on to another prospect, Tony Yoka has posted to his social media that he is looking forward to getting back in the ring soon. He will be preparing for a fight. So this is something that had been signaled by Bob Arum, who now co-promotes Tony Yoka. He was meant to be fighting in the United States with Top Rank on ESPN, but with the pandemic, he is riding it out in France. But Arum had stated in a recent interview that he would be fighting in France in the meantime. And seemingly Yoka probably has something teed up by the looks of it, so hopefully there's an announcement soon about his next fight. TMZ Sports has reported that the rumoured Trevor Bryan and Christopher Lovejoy fight is going ahead, and it will be for Bryan's WBA interim heavyweight title. And I did a video on this last week, and this was based on statements by Lovejoy, but TMZ Sports reporting that King is putting this on, and it will be on the Impact Network. And that King, the 88-year-old, is still going strong. And Christopher Lovejoy, he has actually reposted that little piece by TMZ. And also in another post in recent days, he stated that a deposit from Don King has cleared. So that will allow him to have his training camp. He spoke about waiting on that deposit in his interview with the Boxing Voice to get into a training camp. He is hoping to have Malik Scott as his head trainer. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.